I'm an archaeologist and I've discovered something I shouldn't have. Phase 1. In the northern Neck Peninsula of Virginia, just south of Westmoreland Beach, is an abandoned house and accompanying 50 acres of farmland. The house was built in the 1860s and was later used as a motel for the river cruises that went down the Potomac River during the late 18th and early 19th centuries. The house, now dilapidated in every sense of the word, sits on the property quietly with little disturbance. The land, on the other hand, is a very profitable cornfield. During the last plowing season, the farmers found some small nails and pieces of creamware pottery. Although not uncommon in the area, the farmers were intrigued. They started digging on their own and found large chunks of brick organized in an unorthodox fashion. Luckily, the farmers were smart and documented their findings. They were able to obtain a small grant from the Virginia state government in order to conduct an official excavation. That's where I come into play. I had just finished a project in northern Pennsylvania and was frankly tired of the mind-numbingly boring government compliance work underneath overpasses and off the side of highways. So, when I was offered work that had possible historical significance, I jumped at the opportunity. Being from Eastern Virginia and knowing the topography very well, my company thought it would be a good idea to have me on the project. We were a smaller company, so it was just me and 3 other archaeologists, my project manager Vicky, and 2 other field technicians Jake and Sydney. We all met at the dig site and piled into the air-conditioned company truck Vicky drove just to get to know each other and set the expectation for the upcoming project. The field techs quickly introduced themselves. Sydney was from West Point, New York, and had just graduated from Texas A&M with an underwater archaeology degree. This project was supposed to be a short job before she started as a project manager for a shipwreck off the coast of St. Martin. Jake turned out to be from my alma mater, graduating with the same historic preservation degree. I had heard vaguely about a Jake Bogill while in college, but I never got to put a name to a face. I shyly turned to the group and told them the short summary of my life. I was born and raised in Dahlgren, Virginia, and eventually went to UVA for college. I'd always had a vague interest in history up until I took an American archaeology course during my freshman year. After that, I was hooked. I am only 2 years removed from obtaining my degree, so in many cases the older veterans still think I'm the new guy who thinks Indiana Jones is real. After our short spiels, we turned to Vicky to get the rundown of the project area. Vicky had a big binder full of aerial images, graphs, and soil composition notes for our team to study. Being the most experienced person on the team with over 10 years in the field and a master's degree in archaeology, I soaked in all the information she had. We'll start off with the shovel tests furthest away from the house and work our way in from there, Vicky said while pointing at a grid-lined map of the project area. I don't expect we'll find much in the fields other than more of the brick fragments, nails, and pottery that the farmers have already found. Nevertheless, keep an eye out. We gathered our gear and set out into the open field. I took the line closest to the edge of our area boundary while everyone else filed in 30 meters apart. From there we just started digging. The trials and tribulations of shovel testing on a site can be very tedious and boring most of the time. Dig a 1-meter deep hole, document what you found, most of the time being nothing but mangled worms, fill the hole back in, then repeat. That plus peak summer heat can make you regret some life choices. We dug in standard 30-meter intervals between holes. In the first few shovel tests, I didn't find anything worthwhile. There was an interesting rosehead nail and a Native American projectile point, but nothing too extraordinary. At lunchtime, I sat on my screen and unpacked my hastily made PB&J sandwich. About halfway into my stale concoction of a sandwich, Jake called over the radio for an artifact check. It's very rare to see an experienced archaeologist like him to be calling for a check, but it's always good to play it safe, I guess. I was bored, so I packed up my lunch and headed over to Jake's shovel test to take a look. Sydney and Vicky had already surrounded Jake, gawking at his discovery. I found this. I don't know what it is, but I think it could possibly be a coin, Jake said, while holding a small oblong-shaped metal disc in his hand. It's caked completely in dirt. Here, let me wash it a bit. As Vicky took a toothbrush head from the toolbox and lightly scrubbed the disc. As the dirt rubs off, a design on the disc comes into view. Holy shit! Vicky screams, violently shaking me out of my somewhat zoned-out state. I could see the resemblance of 3/4 of a cross, chipped in the top left corner. I'm quick to point out that this could possibly be a Spanish coin. Sydney gives me a no-shit kind of look as Vicky goes on to explain that it is indeed a Spanish coin. She couldn't quite pin a date to it yet, but generally guessed it was minted in the early 1500s judging by the design. Spanish coins weren't extremely uncommon in Virginia due to the area's extensive trade routes, but it's always a jaw-dropping find. I turned the coin over in my hand, wondering what path it had taken to end up buried in a Virginia cornfield. After the brief excitement of the day, our lunch break ended, and it was back to the grueling pit digging under the Virginia sun. The day went by with no new interesting discoveries, but something about that coin had me thinking about it the entire day. I knew that Spanish coins had been found all along the eastern seaboard, but were they ever that old? Most of my knowledge of Spanish treasures come from pirates of the Caribbean, so I had no real reason to not believe its legitimacy. Of course, Florida has the oldest Spanish relics in the U.S., but Virginia had never had a Spanish colony. The bulk of the artifacts here are mainly English. Regardless, at the end of the day, the coin ended up here, and I'm not one to question how. I tried to put my thoughts to rest and focus on the month-long excavation to come. Time over the next few days moved slowly, marked only by heat, dirt, and the absence of anything exciting. For some reason, the question of the Spanish coin still bothered me. How could it have gotten here? How old is it? I thought to myself. Finally, the weekend had come, and the team decided to grab some dinner and drinks after work on Friday night. Okay, so I've been obsessing over this Spanish coin for the past couple days, and something about it has been throwing me off, Sydney said. Thankfully, I wasn't the only one. I was doing research and found that the oldest Spanish coin found in Virginia dates to the 1680s. It was found during an excavation at Jamestown in 2017. The coin we found could be the oldest Spanish coin found in Virginia, possibly in the entire United States. After a couple minutes of talking about the legitimacy of the coin, Jake says something that we were all secretly thinking. What were the Spanish doing this far up the coast? Well, trade with the Spanish was booming all the way up until the Spanish-American War, so it's not impossible that one single coin made its way onto the shores of Virginia. Vicky says with a confident conjecture, but the coin could date back to the early 1500s. The English, French, and even Dutch were nowhere close to establishing a colony in the New World. At that point, the Spanish would have only had about 20 years to explore the Caribbean, Mexico, and Florida. There's no possible way they could have made it all the way to Virginia by then. I inject. They knew I was right, but nobody could prove anything. Since the dawn of humanity, trade has brought opposing ideas, religions, and objects to the ends of the earth. Roman coins have been found anywhere from Scotland to India. It's not impossible for this single Spanish piece of 8 to have washed ashore during times of trade from the past 500 years, but something didn't add up. After all, this was all pure speculation. The next couple of days proved to be fairly inconsequential. Smaller artifacts like more pottery, a cool button from a Confederate soldier's jacket, and a broken 1950s Coke bottle someone dumped here 70 years ago. It wasn't until shortly after my lunch break on that fateful Wednesday afternoon that I discovered the artifact that would upend the excavation in my life.